Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this is the Honoree-Based fundraising breakout. And the goal for this is to understand what skills are needed to identify and recruit honorees for all honoree-based events. Having ideas and sharing ideas about honorees and encouraging honorees to go forth and share those ideas, and then taking passion-specific ideas, which is very important, and sharing those and building upon those for all honoree-based events. For some reason, they chose me to be your host today. My name is John Norberg, and I'm from the thank you. I'm from the Orange County chapter. And I'll kind of introduce our other panelists from my right to left. Right next to me is Lisa Hamburger. She's from Maryland. Next to her, I think everybody probably knows Sue Hook, who's from Orange County, and then someone you've all seen before as well, Jessica Caniglio. So, kind of to jumpstart this, the questions that we're going to be dealing with and what we're going to be talking about are: what is an honoree? What do they do? What is their event path? What events do they work for? Stuff of that nature. And I'll start by saying that my path to being an honoree started in the OC's Finest and kind of segued into Tomorrow's Leaders, and then from there diversified into other events and helping bring the next years and the next years along with us. But the first topic that we're going to touch upon today will be how to identify the right honoree. So I'm going to have Lisa come up here and speak, and I'll switch spots with you.
I just want to welcome everyone here. When we talk about, I've worked on a lot of events and a lot of galas and things, and when we sit down as a committee and we're trying to come up with, who's the right person, this year, or who's the right person we should have, it's always that fine line. And one of the things I think that's important is, someone who has a sense of community, someone who is a leader in their community in both business and philanthropy, and someone who understands our mission and our culture. They have to understand what that CF mission is. So, and obviously, most importantly, is someone who we feel can bring in sponsors, who can bring in the money, who can let's be real, that's what it's all about. When you ask somebody, it's that underlining thing. So, and I think when we try to if we have somebody in mind, one or two people in mind, it's like, okay, so how do we go and get them? We might ask our board members, do you know this person? Can you make that connection for us? Is that, we understand that person's dedicated to the community. So, who can we have? So, it's usually, I would say, a very strong business leader. And, sometimes we find them with growing companies. We might read about them in the paper. This is, a great, young company. They're starting. Like, maybe we can get them in, when they're just starting out. Nobody else has grabbed them. So I think that's, another important thing. And also we try to find someone that maybe also might have a wide range of influence in the community, at various levels. So I think, those are the things that we find, when we're trying to identify and try to recruit, an honoree to come join our event. So.
So I don't know, can we pass around this mic up here as well? Is that, if anybody, yes, that's a green light. Can't see that far. 2 green lights. One of the things that we kind of wanted to do was ask if you had any questions or ideas and bounce them off of you. In the audience, we have people at home asking questions potentially. None yet, as well. But does anybody have any questions about how to identify the correct honoree?
I'll ask the question.
Go ahead. That'd be good.
Yeah, I think because there is probably a population of people in this room, based on what I can see, who might be focused on just, identifying the one honoree that you might have for an event. I think there's also a good mix of people who are in honoree-based events like Finest, which are a little bit of a different path to recruit than when you're just looking for the one. So maybe because you've done Finest, if you could maybe share with us what approaches you guys have used in the OC for Finest events to bring in that whole group of Finest honorees, which is a bit of a different approach. Some of the same attributes, but a little bit different.
Yeah, I think for Finest, and coming from OC, we're a young Finest group. I think we're on our 3rd year this year, and it started very small for us. We had 8 or 10 people in our first year, but it was kind of passion specific. We started with people with mainly direct connections. I know, at least 5 of the people in that group had a brother, sister, mother, daughter, or a wife with cystic fibrosis, and then kind of expanded out to our larger core base, and from there the semi-connections, if you will, the smaller ones where the person, but they have no link, so you're selling yourself and your connection to those people, and then seeing if they have that spark, that passion to kind of connect and be somebody who can carry on that flame to the next year and the year after that. Like you're saying, Finest is a little different because it is you're nominated. It's an honoree. So every year you have to find somebody. The person, it's succession-based. So you have to find somebody to kind of carry that torch, and it's pretty easy for me to pass it off to my fiance, right? And then for her, it might be a little bit more difficult. So she's going to find friends. She's a nurse and deals with CF patients in a children's hospital. But for people in her spectrum, it's difficult, right? They're all working. And so it's finding people with that spark who are dedicated and are going to jump on it, right? It is passion driven, and anything honoree-based, you're putting your name onto the next generation. So you want to see a little bit of yourself in that person. So
with the Finest, do you find a lot of with Finest, do you find a lot of your honorees from Tomorrow's Leaders? Because it usually is a fairly youngish group.
Yes, so for us, it started Finest and then went Tomorrow's Leaders, but I think there's a lot of commingling now. So we're in our 2nd year of Tomorrow's Leaders, Shayna, and I think maybe 9 or 10 of our Finest, maybe 8, 9, 10 of our Finest are also Tomorrow's Leaders. So it is a good base to commingle, because they are young, they are in the workplace, they are eager to both network on a business aspect and, be philanthropic, find something they're passionate about, find a community that agrees and wants to do the same outreach that they do. So, any more questions? All right, well, we're going to move on to our favorite person, Sue. And Sue is going to be talking about how to be successful as an honoree.
Thank you. I'd like to point out that to me, John's story is the story that we want to hear all across the country. Finest, tomorrow's leaders, chairing the golf tournament? Yeah. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a gala next. But you can't start with that age group with a gala. And so we're in a certain segment of fundraising, and I'm not so sure it's one that is on the rise, but as long as we can maintain it, that will be great. Our Orange County Guild started in 1983. The first honoree was Roger Stanton, and the second one was Tom Riley, and they were involved in our local government. And then my husband Dave and I were asked to be the honorees the next year. Did we know what that involved? Not really. But we were ardent supporters, and next thing you knew, we were inviting all the business people that Dave did business with to buy a ticket and come, and that. I think that was the year that we started our commemorative journal, and that's a wonderful vehicle for... I always like it when you can give back something for people supporting you with a sponsorship or, something like that. So we had a commemorative journal, and we took pictures of our kids. And so on one side, there would be someone with CF, and on the other side, it was so-and-so thanking, for supporting and all that. So it was a two-way street going that way. And then, of course, you would hope that the honoree would sell tables. We never... did any, what's that phrase? Get or give, or ask or get, whatever. We were always heartfelt, and we were lucky for those years that we were heartfelt in who we chose to be our honorees, that it was successful, because there were a few years when we chose someone that was just well-known and loved by people in our grouping. So we stimulated more ticket sales that way, and we stimulated more messages in the commemorative journal. Did that person actually raise any money? Not really, but we raised a lot of money because of that person, although it wasn't him. But then on the other side, so then we went on and we had 32 years of galas. I was the chairman for many years. Gail Dempscher and her husband then chaired it after. And we continued that same thought process, and then what we found was we wanted to assure the honoree that we would make it as easy for them as possible. So we would say, you can give us your list, you can give us your letterhead, we'll send it out, we'll print them out, we'll bring them over, you sign them, We'll handle the responses if you want them to go to you, whatever it was. And it was individual for, each and every one. So we were very fortunate that way. We were also fortunate towards the last few years of our gala that one of our honorees turned out to be a really special couple, and they matched bid for a cure that year. Well, the next year, I think somebody said, well, I guess I have to do that too. And next year, somebody said, well, I guess. And the last year we had our gala, it didn't happen that way. So I was thinking, that was a good time to retire the gala anyhow. The expectation level got a little high. And then we were able to, it was like we retired it after we had taken all those special people that we thought over the years that we should honor. And the list was getting slimmer. And we had another event start, Pipeline to a Cure, and they were honoring somebody, and it just became the timing was right. But it's a basic thing, I think people in the business community, if you ask them, they usually know the story of when you're being honored, that there's more to it than going up to the podium and receiving an award. So that's kind of, Helena, do you think I'm Is there any more I need to add?
So Sue will remember this. Back in the day, which was a long time ago when I was an executive director, we had somebody that had gotten involved with the CF Foundation that owned a restaurant in Orange County. And he was like the Wolfgang Puck of Orange County. Everybody knew him and everybody loved him. So he said to me, I'd like to start an event at my restaurant. So we did. It was called La Dolce Vita. And he said, I'm going to recruit one of my best customers to be the chairman. And what I'd like to do is identify somebody that we will honor. Well, I was a little skeptical because, first of all, he really didn't know that much about CF, and the chairman knew nothing about CF, and the person that he wanted to recruit to be the honoree literally knew nothing about CF, but he was a very prominent person in the Orange County community and had a huge outreach of people. Well, that started an amazing event where every year it was a new honoree. We educated them. We made sure that they met somebody with CF. We made sure that they had a passion. And what it really did is not only help raise a lot of money through that event, but it really expanded the volunteer base for the chapter. So I think it was a win-win.
And that was
it's
at
kind
the
of like
same
Finest.
time with the Guild. So that we were having 2 events a year with an honoree.
Yeah. And it's one of the things I love about Finest too is because some of them are people that have a connection to CF, but so many are young people that are up and coming, you know, tomorrow's leaders, and it's a little bit of the same thing, just recruiting new people that don't know anything. You really educate them and help them get that passion, and they really help expand your fundraising base.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
So if you're not honoring someone with a CF connection, what's the basis of the honor? Like, we have our champion for a cure, who's someone who's made a huge impact on the CF community, and that's why we're honoring them. If it's just someone from the community at large, what's the honor?
Well, our award was called the Breath of Life Award, and it was given for 30 years to people who were definitely involved. The first 2 years were the political people, and they did things in the community for us at that time. This was 1983 and 1984, so CF was not well known at all, and we were happy to have anyone in the county where everybody in the county knew these people's names. We were honoring them. That was a good step for us to start. So ours was called the Breath of Life Award, and it was because of the support that people had done in various ways. So these 2 gentlemen had done something, not in a huge way, but then later on in the years, it was people who had done quite a few things to support CF.
I can maybe add to what you're asking through kind of addressing the way we tend to do it with Finest events, which is you can honor people for their contributions to their profession, to their leadership in the community, to their dedication to any type of philanthropic cause. And it does not have to be based in CF. And I know most Finest events are sort of run in that way, and I think that could maybe apply to an individual honoree as well, as long as you have, I guess, some connection or some way to get them hooked or in the door.
So in launching a Finest event, I know you'd mentioned, I think the Orange County folks said they got maybe 8 honorees the first year. What might you be a realistic goal to set in terms of fundraising? And secondly, was your experience that the companies that these folks worked for ended up being sponsors or chipped in significant financial contributions? Could you maybe just give me a little bit of insight into that? We're trying to,
John, can you
launch
handle
one
that?
in our market.
Sure. For our group, like you mentioned, it did start small, and I think both year 1 and year 2, we had someone working for a bank or a small company, a law firm, something like that, that pitched in as well, either matching what they raised or just flat out giving a donation to get their name out there. And their outreach to their companies, whether they were working for them at the time or running them, really brought in a lot more than what you can almost do on your own, right? I can say for myself, I got my absolute butt kicked because it is, somewhat of a competition, right? And I chose to go to family, friends, social media, coworkers, and kind of, hand out, please, it's for my brother. Here's this picture of him when he's 8. Isn't this sad, right? Now, when they did it, it kind of brought a culture to their workplace of, CF, what is this? I know we have to give a donation and we have X amount of dollars needed to be donated per year, which is a great way to tap into that resource. But then once they were there, was communicating that culture to their workplace for future years. And it's never an easy ask, right? But these companies and these professionals, these young professionals, are looking to do something philanthropic. There's so many ways that they get the halo put around their head as a corporation just from donating a couple of grand. And our year was, X dollars. The year after us was twice as much. This year we're getting our butts kicked again, and the third year is even better. So, that's kind of my take on it.
I would just speak to that. We have done both in our market, like a traditional CF Finest, which was young professionals before they were called Tomorrow's Leaders, that would raise $2,500 to $4,000. Our current Finest program they're currently the finest. They're not going to be the finest. They're older people, married, grandparents, whatever, and their minimum. It's a blind competition, but we say that they need to be able to raise at least $10,000, and we have like 8. Because our finest, when it was huge, it's like 35 people and a lot to manage. But the 8, that group, the first year was like 300,000. The guy that won raised over 100. It gets super competitive. It's super fun. And IT can make it blind, and it's really cool. And we've got probably 8. Is our number 8 again this year? But so a different spin on it. But the youngest was like 2,500, and now for actual professionals, like a higher number, I think you can shoot for anything.
That as well? Or?
Yeah, so everything counts. Like we kind of have the benefit of not having to sell title sponsorships. They're not called that anymore, but presenting sponsorships because it's a competition. So like we don't sell any tables. Our office does, like maybe 2 or something. The candidates, because table sales count, sponsorship counts, silent auction counts. So they really drive all of that revenue, which is awesome. And then night of bid for a cure counts, so they're on the card. You can put it towards your candidate, and it drives all of that as well.
And so are you netting like 100,000 on 200 people, 300 people?
It's about 400, and we net 312 the first year. Again, it's quality of candidate. Last year we net like 140. This year we'll probably be closer to 3 again, just because we lucked into some really great people. But it is nice that we're not having the burden of selling anything. They're doing it for us.
What chapter are you with?
Indiana chapter.
Just out of curiosity, how many people in here have a finance program that's maybe less than 5 years old? Yeah. So, and that's when we get to some Q&A, maybe we'll bounce around. But you asked a great question about companies and how you get into recruiting. What we've done as well in Pittsburgh is to seek out companies that we may not have a connection to, but may have matching gift programs, double match, triple match, and present it to them like, hey, who in your office is dynamic? Who's a killer? Who wants this to be on their resume and would really knock this out of the park? And they get behind it in that way. And then we have a residual candidate year over year. And that's a huge piece of, why we get some of the numbers we get. So that's something that you should think about. And we'll circle, back. But yeah, that's important in growing it because we're dumb enough to put the number 50 on ours from the beginning, but call it something else. And of course, yeah, it leads to sponsorships, it leads to all kinds of other opportunities. And then the connections when, they eventually figure out that their neighbor down the street has a niece with CF. It's just an endless web of, connection and connectivity, and really works. But identifying some companies, some firms, some, lenders or something like that, and saying, hey, who do you have? They'll be happy to get that, free press and the publicity that comes with it. So it doesn't, like Jessica said, it doesn't have to be always about CF initially. That's our job to rope them in and tell our stories and help them create theirs. But initially, we're running things in a very business-like manner, very efficiently and effectively, and people can get bought in from there. And so that's part of our job, is to identify those companies at first.
Well, I was involved with AZ's Finest back in the dark ages, real dark ages. And what we found, the easiest way that we did it was through a group called the 2030 Club. It's a service-based group of I think it was all men at that time. They're probably not allowed to do that anymore. But they were all young professionals, accountants, just getting started, financial managers, and they had to be between the ages, obviously, 20 to 30. But right there, we had, the very first year, we had 12. By the time I was pretty much out of that genre, we were getting up to 50 to 60 that would interview, and we would take 30. And that's the way we started. It was with find a service-based group that is looking for something like this to do, and you're in like Flynn.
Let me just interject real quickly, because it's kind of funny. So in the 1971 or 1972, my husband Dave was president of the 2030 Club in Orange County, our past president at that time, and then we had an office in his building, and so we kind of got him involved, and that's when we started our first radio auction. And so there's still people from that club involved with our chapter today. So, yes. But, yeah, I don't know.
Just to, sorry. Go ahead.
Sue, I wonder if you could explain a little more about what was important in satisfying the honoree. You talked a little bit about support preceding the event, during the event, and then maybe things that you did after the event to make it a great experience for them, so that when they then tell their peers,
right,
why did you do this? What was it like? Should I consider being the next honoree? And also, could you describe some of the specific vehicles that you would use at your galas or other events to provide the fundraising for the event? Was it a table? Was it an ad? What were the things that people got for their donations that they felt good about,
right,
as a sponsor supporting the honoree?
Well, I continued a tradition that started when Dave and I were asked to be the honorees. A beautiful basket of flowers was delivered to our house with a note in it saying that you have been chosen to be this year's honorees. And it was just, so beautiful in that. So I tried over the rest of the years to do something that would equally wow someone else, whatever it was to them personally in that. And if it was anyhow, a bottle of wine and flowers, and made a big deal. I did a letter, and it was, you have been chosen unanimously by the Orange County Guild. And they all seem to be honored by that. We never had anyone that was difficult or expected anything in particular. We just tried to be solicitous of how far they wanted to go and what they were doing to their comfort level. And that always worked well. So when we would do sponsorships and things like that, of course, we, Dave Mount, he's one of our national trustees that's here. He happened to be president of a record company at the time, music label. And then another honoree was the head. It was right, I laugh now when I look back on Netflix and all these names, because Frank Contizo, who was one of our honorees, he was sending these letters to these people we'd never heard of. Well, you've heard of them all now. And so we did the commemorative journal as a way of giving value to the sponsorship, that was coming in. They would get a page, whether it was a bronze, silver, gold, a table at the gala. Use the words like, I forget what the words are, they all start with C as far as the description of the table. What were they? I can't even remember. But so those type of things, inclusion in press releases. Always they knew that there would be press going with it, and sometimes we landed a cover of the Newport Beach 714. A couple of times we did. And so does that, and then silent auction, live auction, those type of things. And if they had any connections, we would always ask if there was something unusual that they had that we could use as an auction item. And we just tried to take it on their comfort level, but try and extract as much as we could.
And one other thing that I would add, just to kind of go back, and you could do this, one honoree or finest. I think most finest programs have a big notification day, and it is this whole social media blast, and it's the same type of thing. You bring balloons and flowers and champagne to someone's office, and you get their boss involved, you get their teams involved, and it sort of kicks off the buzz that you want to get additional fundraising and to sell tables, because you've now included their colleagues in this and they think it's super cool. And I think that most finest programs do that. And again, you can use, you use social media to blast all of that out, and the honorees start sharing it. So it can really be a whole catalyst. And I think you could do the same thing with one honoree. Right. You could bring a whole basket, a crew, social media postings, and all these things that can help.
And that's the difference between then and now, is that it was the picture in the newspaper and that, or a magazine 4 weeks later, and now it's instant, which is very gratifying, and we're all used to it now too.
So I come from the New York chapter, I still have the belief that being in New York City, it would be very hard for us to implement a finest program. But I also believe that doesn't mean that we can't have some sort of honoree-based event, aside from gala. Which comes first? Does the foundation decide to have an honoree-based event, or do the volunteers decide to have an honoree-based event?
Being a volunteer, I probably shouldn't answer that one. I think, I think it could go either way. But it has to be. You have to be mutually aligned with the office to know if you're going to get. You have to know that they're staffed to do what you want to do, and that. So, and usually, if it's well thought out, I wouldn't think there would be a problem with it. But the staff could decide it too, and then try and come out and get you, Harris, to do it. That happens a lot.
Hi, John Ruggiero here, a Connecticut chapter volunteer. We do finest for about 7 years now, and we had vast improvements over the past couple years for raising more funds, even though we're still a small market and a chapter. Do you have any ideas for Bid for a Cure? We struggle to get people, it depends on the group, to pledge money that night. We have put plants in the audience before, get a board member, to start with a $5,000 phony bid, and we have found, that has worked in the past to get, somebody else then to see that they're doing it and to add on. So any ideas for Bid for a Cure or other,
Just as an observer from having attended Finest, I was very nervous about doing Bid, and I was very surprised at how well it went.
I think when dealing with Bid for a Cure, a good MC, someone energetic, someone who involves people in the crowd, puts them on the spot. When you're on the spot being asked to donate to a charity and there's 90 people looking at you and the sweat's trickling down the back of your neck, you're more apt to raise your hand than if it's just a guy up there saying, well, we've got, $125 over here and this, that, and the other. Not for honoree specific, although I think most events can generate some sort of honoree presence, whether it's a golf tournament, a walk, a gala, whatever you have. But I think giving that kind of pressure, that kind of connection, and whatever the event has, it's something specific too. I know at a golf tournament that we run, we do centerpieces, right? We have one person who's on the committee. Their sole job is to make centerpieces. And we bid for a cure, and the winner of each table takes home a centerpiece. It's silly, but it works.
We added just one element to our bid last year for finest was whichever honoree, whichever table they were at, raised the most money, and you could select that you were giving your bid to that honoree. That honoree actually got a table at our chef's event. And it was really neat for that individual. And we raised more in the bid for the cure than we had in the 6 years we had done that. So it was an added competition that night that was really.
And that's
really
such a great idea because you're exposing them to a whole new event that is a little more grown up and fun. That's great.
This one actually is happening in Houston's chapter. For their bid for a cure, they're going and getting baskets of toys, and they're working with their care center and the children's hospital because instead of somebody bidding on nothing, they're bidding on being the one who gets to give this basket of toys to the care center or to the children's hospital. So it'll be given in their name. And I heard that it is skyrocketing, what the bid, because now they're actually getting something, even though they're not taking it home.
Awesome. I think just out of time sensitivity, we're going to move on, and I'm going to breeze through my section since we've touched so much on it already. I was asked to speak on coaching honorees towards success. And I played tennis growing up. Later in life, I played professionally. After I played professionally, I coached professionally. Going and looking at all of the coaching that I did and all the coaching I received over my lifetime, I would say to build what I spoke about earlier, that spark in someone, or to see it and kind of to help it grow, is to build a personal connection. It's not hard. It's people do still handwrite cards, believe it or not. It's handwriting a card. It's getting coffee with someone new. I know one of our Tomorrow's Leaders, Dan, who's in the room, he goes out and meets individually with these people, not on the phone, not via FaceTime, not via text, individually with these members. And once they feel that connection, you can kind of build the relationship and then pass on what you've learned from your experiences, both good and bad. The next part about coaching is always playing devil's advocate, right? Knowing what is bad about the current situation, knowing what you can't do and how it's difficult, and teaching them the ways around it, or to break right through it and say, hey, coach, you're wrong. I can do it better than you. Then you found, a great student. But, every person who's been in my seat in Finest and moved forward a year and had to nominate someone else has to deal with that person in a way where they are consistently asking you questions. What did you do? Did you do an event? How do you ask people for money? I'm not good at asking for money. How did you do it? Why can you do it for me? And coaching someone into that role is a difficult task, but one that is kind of better suited by someone who's in their position. So just teaching them the pitfalls and teaching someone how to ask for money, because that's what this is. A lot of these honoree-based events is asking for money and asking the same people for money year in and year out, and finding new, fun, different ways to draw them to give you those funds, right? I think I want to pass it on to Jessica here, and she's going to talk a little bit more. Go ahead, let's switch spots.
Yeah, so before I get to my specific topic, just to address one more thing from what John was saying is when you're coaching, whether it's an individual honoree or a group of honorees, I think we've found in a lot of our events, in Charlotte and other things I've been involved in, it is critical to find a mentor for people to have that one person. So if it's just one honoree, find a past honoree that you think they're going to connect with personally and let them mentor. In your finest events, have your committee, one of the committee roles in a finest event should be mentoring. And so partnering up people so there is one source for them to go to, and someone's job is to mentor someone is important. And then the only other thing I would add on that is during my first VLC, I learned that in finest events, people were taking kind of parsing out their finest members into groups, assigning them a CF family, and running it as a competition between your group and your CF family. And in finest events, a lot of people don't have a connection, so you're creating that spark that we were talking about earlier. You're creating a spark by connecting them with a family, and you're piping them to stay involved potentially for a long time that way. And so I use that kind of as an introduction. What I am up here to talk about is moving honorees into other roles in the chapter, and meeting that family in my first event was the catalyst that hooked me, and now I'm never leaving. But it's the catalyst that really allowed me to connect. So, my path has been a little bit of a unique one. I had no direct CF connection when I started. I did an honoree-based event. I found that catalyst. I found that connection, and I won't bore you with all of the various things I've done, but I've moved in, within my chapter into leadership roles in different events, 3 different events at this point, I guess. I was given the opportunity to be on what we called the Young Professionals Board at the time and lead that, and then also participating on the executive board and leading the executive board. And for anybody who was in our volunteer engagement session earlier, Bonnie talked a little bit about, this is an organization where you can be a big fish in a small pond. And when I was 26 years old and the foundation said, we want you to be on the executive board, I was like, wow, this is great. None of my friends are being asked to be on these boards. And it was cool. It was a great experience. And I see a lot of yellow ribbons here, which means there's a lot of staff here. So I want to point out that those are really important experiences and moments for people professionally and in their philanthropic endeavors. So I think after moving, doing kind of all the things at the local level, I got to get involved nationally at the foundation, and I've been on a committee, and now I'm leading our National Tomorrow's Leaders Committee. And again, because there's a lot of yellow, I'll give a plug for staff. It was really important that my leadership in the chapter listened to me. They knew what I wanted to do, and they knew, I'm looking at Dee Dee, they knew when I was done with events. When I was done with an event, I was done, and I was ready to do something else, and they supported that. They found the right next path for me, and they told me what my path could be, sharing your path with your volunteers, that you can start as a Tomorrow's Leader going to professional development events, you can move into various events in your chapter, various leadership opportunities in your chapter, and then you can take that and do something nationally. It's been, incredible to be a part of these things, but a lot of it was because my chapter staff listened to me. They listened to me when I wanted to move on, and they heard what I wanted to do and helped me stay connected. So I think those are, for me, the things that are critical to moving honorees around into other roles, really listening, partnering them with someone at the beginning to give them that spark, and then listening to them and talking to them about what they want to get from this and educating them about the difference that they can make here. So, any questions? I think we're almost out of time, probably, too.
Yeah, I think we're running short on a little bit of time. We're supposed to break into group discussions and talk about the different events, Finest, golf, gala, stuff like that. But there's some questions before that I don't think we ended up getting around to. I know our internet questions are down, but the gentleman in the red had asked a question on what we had done for sponsors. What do they get from this? And I know in my experience in running a golf tournament, we give them as much as we possibly can. We set specific things. Do you want to be the sponsor for X? One year we chose vests. Do you want to be the vest sponsor, the clothing sponsor, right? And so we would put our classic logo on the vest, and then they would get a full big scale logo for their donation as well. They get a cover sheet in our pamphlet. They get a table. They get a foursome of golf, so on and so forth. But they also get to push out their name, right? It's marketing for them. So that's marketing that's going to be around every time a guy wears a golf vest or a golf jacket or a hat or whatever it is. And I know that there are plenty of other opportunities out there for those type of things. Somebody else had asked a question of kind of good ways to do networking. The one way that I've found recently that has been very good is our chapter made us committee cards. And it sounds so silly, but I work in the world of finance now, and I get asked for my card every day, right? And I'm always handing somebody when they ask me, oh, well, let me hit you up. I'll call you later. And so I'm handing them a business card. But whenever I'm making the CF ask or the CF connection, and I'm giving somebody a card that is CF specific, whether you make it yourself or it comes from your committee, there is a little bit more that resonates with that individual, right? Oh, wow, this person does this for CF. I want to involve myself with them. So it makes your connection a little bit easier. All right. Is anything else? Any more questions from anybody? Okay. Well, I think we can probably close it up then. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.